I am going to be using raw local honey for this recipe, as well as the Tahitian honeymoon mead from Superstition Meadery. We have a collaboration soap here we're doing. And I want to soften up my honey a little bit so it's easier to work with. And I use a generous amount of the honey. Honey, I've read, is considered one of the original skincare ingredients because it offers so many great benefits for your skin. It's antibacterial, so it's been used on wounds in the past too. But for obvious reasons, it's real sticky, so that's probably why we stopped using it straight up. But you could use it straight up on your skin. In a soap, it's also good for things like acne, and it's very soft, softening and hydrating. I'm just getting it a little bit warm. What that will do is make it flow a little bit easier. You'll see why I need it to flow easier later. When you're making soap with alcohol, you want to try and eliminate as much of the alcohol content as you can. So what I do is I usually leave the bottle open for a while before I start using it. And I did that already in the past. Just to get it ready to be used for soap making, and keeping the content of alcohol low is safer. I make soap like I cook sometimes, so I have exact ingredients and measurements, but sometimes I put a little bit of my own love into it, I guess. So it's not always exactly the same, just like when you're cooking your favorite recipe. It's exactly the same ingredients though. All right, so the next I got that in there. We've got our honey. Now I'm gonna do my essential oils and super fatting oil. If you have too much or too little of certain key ingredients, then the soap won't set up properly. And if you have too much essential oils, that causes issues as well. But there are some variables within the recipe that I'm aware of that I can kind of change up sometimes. Weather actually will affect different recipes here, like with bath bombs. If it's really humid, it'll absorb the humidity in the air, so I have to adjust the water in the recipe then. And with the soap, sometimes there's some variables as well. I'm not gonna just eyeball my ingredients. I have to have the exact measurement, the exact amount of each ingredient, so that I know that it's going to turn out properly. And some of the variables, if I add more of one thing, I have to take away from another thing. It's a big equation that I'm taking from and adding to in different areas. But right now I'm measuring my super fat oil and my essential oils, and those I'm going to get real specific with. This is benzoin. It's essential oil, very resinous. It helps to give it that sweet smell along with the vanilla that I'm going to add. I'm using this as my super fat oil right now. So when you make soap, you can add oils during the saponification process, or right as it starts to saponify, because it will help to neutralize the lye in the recipe more, and it also makes the soap a little bit more moisturizing and smooth. It's adding super fat. You're adding more oil. You're adding more oil to make it more moisturizing and more soothing to the skin, and it helps to neutralize the lye more. Now, when I'm making soap, I want it to be at a specific temperature. This is my oils. We have enough oil in here measured out to do 6 molds, my size molds of Tahitian honeymoon soap. And the oils in here are coconut oil, olive oil, shea butter, and some palm oil. And then the liquid is going to be the Tahitian honeymoon that I already measured out with coconut milk and water. And then we add the sodium hydroxide to this, and that'll heat it up really hot. My little trick that I do when I'm working and I'm doing multiple batches of soap is, since the lye is going to heat this up, and I want these two to be at the temperature I like to work at, about 120 degrees. This could get as high as 200. With alcohol in it, could go up even higher, 240. So what I do is the water component in here, I use ice. And then that helps to keep it from getting that real high temperature, and then we don't have to wait to mix the two of them together for hours. So right now it's just Tahitian honeymoon in here. I've got my trace oil, so I think I said saponification, but when I mix the oil and the water later, it's gonna start to blend and then it starts to saponify, and right then it's called trace. So when your oils and liquids are at what we call trace, then you can add your super fat oils, your essential oils. If you're wanting to do colors in the soap, you'll add whatever you're using for color. Maybe that's clay or some sort of other super food powder, if you're doing organic skincare. If you're not, you might be using other stuff, and I don't know what that other stuff is because I don't use it. So, and then this helps me with making sure the temperatures are good. Right now, my temperature is 89 degrees in here, and I want to get it to 120. But I'm not as concerned about heating this up. This I could get heated up to where I want it quick. It's the lye mixture now that I'm going to be focusing on. So let's start with this. As long as it's organic and I'll eat it, then I'll use it. I'll eat this organic coconut milk. It's what I use at home. So I just don't use animal products in my skincare, except I can't entirely say my products are vegan. I use beeswax, I use honey, but that's the most I use. I don't ever use goat's milk or anything. Not that I have anything against it, I just don't do it. Goat's milk is a popular soap ingredient, and I have a lot of friends who make goat's milk soap, but I don't. I like to use coconut milk as my milk. I was raised by a bunch of Italian women who and Czechoslovakian grandma, Italian grandma, who did a lot of cooking, and that's how I operate in my kitchen. So initially when I started making all these recipes, I wasn't writing them down. And luckily, someone that started working with me encouraged me to do that because now I can have others help me in here to produce more. These burners work fast, so I have to pay attention to the temperature because I don't want this to get too hot, because if my oils get too hot, then I have to wait for it to cool down. I can't throw ice in here, it'll throw off the recipe. All my measurements are done, so I need to pay attention. If I put the lid on, it's going to heat up more. If I leave it off, those are little common sense tricks. All right, so now I've got this ready to go. My next step is the sodium hydroxide lye, the alkali substance that I used to be really scared of, but it's just an alkali. And you just be careful with it. And if you do get it in an area you shouldn't, just flush it real quick with some water, and that will neutralize it. I need my molds. This is what the soap goes into. The Tahitian honeymoon, it's all about the honey and the bees, and I use bubble wrap to make it look like a honeycomb. I haven't watched Fight Club in a long time, but we don't talk about Fight Club, right? Okay, here's our molds. This, I might adjust these later when it's time to pour. This is a big batch. This is 6 molds, so that's a heavy pot there. It's about 18 bars per mold. Ooh, looks like we've got a damaged, I didn't know this was damaged. There's about 18 bars per mold here. So that times 6. The one last thing I need is right here. This is my mixer. The more I get set up before I mix the two together, the better, because once I start mixing the oil with the lye mixture and the liquid, things move fast. As soon as it starts to saponify, I'm going to add those trace oils and ingredients, and then mix it up really good, and then pour it into the mold. I want the soap to set up in the mold, not in the pot. So that's why things are going to move pretty quick. And I think I'm just about ready to start making that happen. Saponify means it is turning to soap. The oils and the liquids are now turning to soap. the chemical reaction. And this is it, the scary lye. When I first started to do soap, I was scared of the lye. I didn't know where to get the lye, and I went to a hardware store, and they came in little containers like this. This container, it's a sentimental thing, is one of the first containers I bought of lye when I first started making soap. So now I use it as a scoop. So lye has an affinity for water. It'll absorb it right from the air. So that's why we mix it immediately and keep it sealed really well. I'm gonna put this in here. But you'll see it's gonna melt the ice. Yeah, it's heating up. See how it's heating up? The ice is going away. Got that pretty color from the Tahitian honeymoon. And I'm gonna take the temperature and see how hot it is. It's important to mix it while you're taking the temperature, because the temperature at the surface isn't always the same when you mix it all up. Okay, I'm at 143. I want this to go down about 23 degrees before I start mixing. So we have a little bit of time. There's nothing to do in the meantime. So I could, if I put a little bit more ice, it would have been closer to the temperature I need. But with this recipe, it's tricky because it's coconut milk and some alcohol, and both of those add the component to increase the heat even more than just water. My next recipe, if I do the same amount of ice, it's not gonna probably do that. And this is dangerous right now. This is corrosive. You don't wanna bathe in this. You don't wanna get it on your skin. But once it's mixed with all that oil, it brings it to a neutral. It'll saponify, it'll cure. Within about 48 hours, it's safe to use. So what we do is we put it in the mold, and then tomorrow at this time, we'll be cutting it into bars of soap. And then we like to set all of our soap up here on our rack and let it sit until it's ready to go out on the shelf for sale. Mixing it helps it to cool down a little bit quicker, but it's gonna take, to get this to the temperature I want it to be, it's gonna take at least 15 minutes. See, it's starting to thicken up. Starting to do trace now. You see it? See, it's a little thicker. You can see where the mixer is going through it. I'm going to pour it in just a minute or less. Okay. It's starting to solidify pretty quick here. Setting up quick because there's a lot of sugars in this soap. Now I put honey on top. This is why I tried to thin it out earlier, but it's a little bit thick right now, but it'll still work. So you gotta move quick, but you also gotta be careful because you don't want it on you and your skin. So I wear my gloves, and that usually keeps it good. The chemical reaction has begun. It's starting to turn into soap, and saponification is happening, and it's going to set overnight, and then we'll cut it tomorrow, and then in a couple days after we cut it, it's good to be used on your skin. But it's hot right now. It's going to get really hot in a little while, like hotter than it is right now. As it sets up, it'll go through a gel phase, and then it'll start to cool down. Sometimes people will porous soap, and it'll be hard already, so they can't get it to go into their mold, and it's not the shape they want it to be. But once it gets into that gel phase, when it's really hot, you can kind of rework it at that time and maneuver pushing it around if it's like a trick to troubleshoot a mistake. But these are good. I'm done. All I have to do now is I'm going to set them on my curing shelf and then start my next soap. This soap smells really good. It's a very sweet smell. The first time I made it, somebody tried eating it because it looks delicious too. But don't eat the soap.